Hello everyone, and welcome to Fresh Master Channel. Today, we are going to have some story from Reddit. But before we start, don't forget to subscribe, like the video if you enjoyed it, and leave a comment down below. These simple clips will mean a lot to the future of this channel.
The only thing colder than my pillow at 2 in the morning was Riley's side of the bed. She'd been pulling these girls' night out stunts more frequently lately, always with some excuse about needing to decompress from work stress or reconnect with her college friends. 2 months into our marriage, and I was already sleeping alone more nights than not. I'm Nick Dalton, 38 years old, and I run a small construction company here in Millbrook, Maine. Nothing fancy, just honest work building decks, renovating kitchens, and fixing whatever the harsh New England winters break. Riley works in HR at some tech startup downtown, always talking about synergy and optimizing human capital, like people are spreadsheet entries. My phone buzzed against the nightstand, vibrating like an angry wasp. Cal's name lit up the screen. Cal Henderson's been my best friend since high school, the kind of guy who'd help you move a body without asking questions, though thankfully we've never had to test that theory. "Nikki, you awake?" Cal's voice was tight, nervous in a way that made my stomach clench. "I am now. What's going on?" "Bro, you need to get down to Pulse. Riley's here." Pulse was the downtown club where 20-somethings went to pretend they were still in college. Not exactly Riley's usual scene, but maybe Tessa had dragged her there. Tessa was Riley's fitness trainer friend, all fake tan and Instagram poses. So she said she was going out with the girls. Cal was quiet for a long moment. Too long. "Cal, what aren't you telling me?" "She's here, Nick, with your brother." The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. Evan. My younger brother Evan, the family screw-up who'd been crashing at his buddy's place since his latest girlfriend kicked him out. Evan, who'd always been jealous of anything good in my life. "What do you mean with him?" "I mean dancing, touching, looking real cozy for a sister-in-law and brother-in-law." I sat up in bed staring at the empty space where my wife should have been. The rational part of my brain tried to find innocent explanations. Maybe they'd run into each other. Maybe she was just being friendly. Maybe Cal was reading too much into it. But deep down, in that place where you know things before your brain catches up, I already understood what was happening. "You still there, Nick?" Yeah, I'm here. What do you want me to do?" I looked around our bedroom, at the wedding photos on the dresser, at Riley's clothes scattered on her side of the room like she owned the place. Which legally she now did. Community property and all that. "Nothing. Don't do anything. I'm coming down." "Nick, maybe you should..." "I'm coming down, Cal, but I'm not going in tools blazing. I need to see this for myself." I hung up and sat in the darkness for a moment, letting the reality sink in. 2 months. We'd been married for exactly 2 months, and my wife was apparently getting cozy with my brother at some sleazy downtown club. The thing about betrayal is that it always wears your favorite cologne. Evan had been using the same cheap aftershave since high school, and I'd been smelling it on Riley's clothes for weeks. I'd convinced myself she was just hugging him goodbye when he visited, being the affectionate sister-in-law. God, I was an idiot. I got dressed in the dark, pulling on jeans and a black t-shirt. If I was going to catch my wife cheating, I might as well dress for the occasion. My reflection in the bathroom mirror looked like heck. Stubble, bags under my eye. The general appearance of a man who'd been slowly realizing his marriage was a mistake but hadn't wanted to admit it. The drive to Pulse took 15 minutes through empty streets. Millbrook wasn't exactly a bustling metropolis, especially at 2:30 on a Wednesday morning. The club's neon sign cast pink and blue shadows on the wet pavement, and I could hear the bass thumping from half a block away. I parked across the street and called Cal. "I'm here. Where are you?" "Upstairs balcony, northwest corner. You can see the whole dance floor from here." "And them?" "Still here. Still close." I took a deep breath and walked toward the club's entrance. The bouncer was some kid who looked like he bench-pressed small cars for fun, but he barely glanced at my ID. The music hit me like a physical force as I climbed the stairs to the balcony level, weaving through clusters of drunk college kids and divorced guys trying to relive their 20s. Cal was waiting by the railing, nursing a beer and looking uncomfortable. He nodded toward the dance floor below without saying anything. There they were. Riley wore a tight red dress I'd never seen before, something that showed off the curves she'd been working on with Tessa. Her blonde hair was loose around her shoulders, and she was moving to the music with the kind of confidence she never showed around me anymore. And Evan, my little brother with his gym-sculpted arms and that cocky smile, that had been getting him into trouble since we were kids. He had his hands on Riley's hips, pulling her close, whispering something in her ear that made her throw her head back and laugh. They weren't dancing like family members. They weren't even dancing like friends. They were dancing like lovers. "How long have they been like this?" I asked Cal, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "About an hour. Started out just talking at the bar, but..." He gestured helplessly at the scene below. As I watched, Evan spun Riley around and pulled her back against him, his arms wrapping around her waist from behind. She leaned into him, her eyes closed, completely lost in the moment. When she turned back around, they were face to face, inches apart. Then they kissed. Not a family peck on the cheek, not a friendly goodbye kiss. A real kiss, deep and hungry, the kind that leaves no doubt about what's happening between two people. I felt something cold and hard settle in my chest, not rage exactly. More like clarity, the kind of brutal, crystalline understanding that cuts through months of self-deception and wishful thinking. "Nick?" Cal's voice seemed to come from far away. I pulled out my phone and started recording. The camera quality wasn't great in the dim club lighting, but it was good enough. Good enough to capture Riley's hands tangled in Evan's hair. Good enough to show her pressing against him like she couldn't get close enough. Good enough to document every lie she'd told me about working late and girls' nights out. "What are you doing?" Cal asked. "Gathering evidence." I filmed for about 3 minutes, getting multiple angles, making sure both their faces were clearly visible. Riley and Evan were so lost in each other, they never looked up toward the balcony. They never noticed the husband and brother recording their betrayal from 30 feet away. When I had enough footage, I put my phone away and headed for the stairs. "Where are you going?" Cal hurried after me. "Home. Aren't you going to confront them?" I paused at the top of the staircase, looking back at the dance floor where my wife was still grinding against my brother like they were the only two people in the world. Not yet. Sometimes revenge is served not with a knife, but with a camera. The drive home was a blur of empty streets and racing thoughts. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I'd already sent the video to 3 people. My lawyer, Evelyn Marsh, my email account, and a cloud storage backup. The beauty of modern technology is that evidence doesn't disappear just because you wish it would. I sat in my truck for a moment, staring at the house Riley and I had bought together just 6 months ago. We'd been so excited about it then, talking about kids and Christmas mornings and growing old together on the front porch. Now it just looked like a crime scene waiting to happen. My phone buzzed with a text from Evelyn. "Got your video. We need to talk first thing tomorrow. Don't do anything stupid tonight." Too late for that, I thought. I'd already done something stupid. I'd married Riley Brennan. But that was about to change. I didn't sleep. Instead, I sat in my home office, a converted bedroom upstairs, and planned. By the time the sun came up, I had a strategy that would have made Sun Tzu proud. First, I called my bank and froze all our joint accounts. Every credit card, every checking account, every line of credit we'd opened together as a married couple. The customer service representative was very understanding when I explained that I suspected fraudulent activity. "We'll need you to come in and sign some paperwork, Mr. Dalton." "I'll be there when you open." Next, I called Evelyn Marsh. Evelyn was 73 years old, sharp as a razor blade, and had been practicing family law in Millbrook for 40 years. She'd seen every kind of marital disaster imaginable, and nothing surprised her anymore. "Nicholas, I watched your video. It's quite clear what's happening. How fast can we move on this? In Maine, we have a no-fault divorce system, but adultery can still affect property division and spousal support. With evidence this clear, we can file immediately. Do it. There's something else we need to discuss. Your wife has rights as a spouse, including the right to remain in the marital home during proceedings. We can't just lock her out." I looked around the office, the desk I'd built myself, the bookshelves I'd installed, the windows I'd replaced last winter. Everything in this house bore my fingerprints, my sweat, my work. What if she abandons the property voluntarily? Evelyn was quiet for a moment. That would change things considerably. But Nicholas, whatever you're planning, I'm not planning anything illegal, Evelyn. Just creative. After hanging up with my lawyer, I went to work on the house itself. I changed the locks on all the doors, but I didn't throw Riley's stuff out on the lawn. That would have been too obvious, too legally problematic. Instead, I packed everything of hers into neat boxes and stacked them in the garage, along with a note explaining that she could collect them at her convenience. The note was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive politeness. Riley, I've packed your belongings for you. Please coordinate with Evelyn Marsh regarding pickup times. I think it's best if we don't see each other right now while we work through our differences. Nick, by 8 a.m., I was at the bank signing paperwork. By 9 a.m., I was at Evelyn's office filing for divorce. By 10 a.m., I was at the hardware store buying new deadbolts and a security camera system for the front door. Riley didn't come home until almost noon. I was in my workshop in the basement when I heard her car in the driveway, then the sound of her key in the lock, followed by confusion and mounting frustration as she realized it didn't work anymore. She knocked. Then she pounded. Then she started yelling, Nick, open this door! What the heck is going on? I took my time walking upstairs, pausing to grab a cup of coffee and check my appearance in the hallway mirror. I looked calm, rested, completely in control. It was amazing what 8 hours of righteous anger could do for a man's complexion. When I opened the door, Riley was standing on the porch in yesterday's red dress, her makeup smeared, her hair a mess. She looked like exactly what she was, a woman who'd spent the night somewhere she shouldn't have been. What's with the locks? She demanded, pushing past me into the house. Security upgrade. You never know who might try to break in. She spun around, her eyes flashing with anger and something else. Guilt, maybe, or fear. Don't be cute, Nick. Why didn't my key work? Because it's not your house anymore. I handed her the note I'd prepared, along with a copy of the divorce papers Evelyn had filed that morning. Riley's face went through several interesting color changes as she read. You can't be serious. Dead serious? Your stuff's in the garage. You have 24 hours to arrange pickup. Nick, whatever you think you saw, I didn't think I saw anything, Riley. I recorded what I saw. Would you like me to show you? Her face went white. You were at the club? Briefly, long enough to document my wife dry humping my brother on the dance floor. Riley sank onto the couch, the divorce papers fluttering to the floor. For a moment, she looked genuinely stricken, like she was finally understanding the magnitude of what she'd done. Then, she went on the attack. You had no right to spy on me. I had every right. You're my wife, or were anyway. It wasn't what it looked like. I pulled out my phone and queued up the video. Really? Because it looked like you were about to have love with my brother right there on the dance floor. We were just dancing. With your tongues? Riley stood up abruptly, pacing to the window and back. I could see her mind racing, trying to find an angle, a way to spin this that didn't end with her losing everything. Okay, fine. Maybe things got a little out of hand. But it was just one night, Nick. One stupid mistake. We can work through this. No, we can't. Don't be so dramatic. People have problems in marriage. That's what counseling is for. I laughed, and the sound was harsh enough to make her flinch. Counseling? Riley, you were cheating on me with my brother. 2 months into our marriage, there's no counseling for that. I wasn't cheating. We didn't actually sleep together. Is that what you were going to say? She nodded eagerly, like she'd found a lifeline. Because that would be a lie too. I continued. I've been smelling Evan's cologne on you for weeks. I've seen the way you two look at each other when you think I'm not paying attention. Last night wasn't the beginning, Riley. It was just the first time you got sloppy enough to get caught. The fight went out of her all at once. She collapsed back onto the couch, her head in her hands. What do you want from me, Nick? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I want you gone. The house is mine. I bought it before we got married, and I've got the paperwork to prove it. But we're married. I have rights. You had rights. You gave them up when you decided to explore your options with my brother. My phone rang. Evan's name appeared on the screen, and I smiled. Perfect timing. I answered on speaker. Hey, little brother. Nick, we need to talk. Evan's voice was tight, nervous. He knew I knew. I'm listening. Not over the phone. Can we meet somewhere? I looked at Riley, who was staring at the phone like it was a snake about to strike. Why don't you come over? Riley's here. We can all have a nice family chat. Nick, I don't think that's a good idea. I think it's a great idea. In fact, I insist. I hung up and turned back to Riley. He'll be here in 20 minutes. That gives you just enough time to explain to me how this happened. Nick, please, start talking or I start sending that video to your parents, your friends, and your boss. Riley's eyes went wide. She worked for a small company where everyone knew everyone else's business. A cheating scandal would destroy her professionally as well as personally. It happened, she said finally. Evan came over a few weeks ago when you were working late. We were just talking, and he was telling me about his breakup with Jessica, and I was complaining about how we never talk anymore, and you decided to console each other. It wasn't like that. What was it like, Riley? Help me understand how my wife ended up in my brother's arms. She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks in black streams. You're never here, Nick. You work all the time, and when you are home, you're tired or distracted or working on some project in the basement. I felt like I was married to a ghost, so you decided to get some attention from Evan. He listened to me. He made me feel wanted. And I didn't. Not lately, no. I absorbed this, trying to find some kernel of truth in her words that might make me feel guilty or responsible. But all I felt was a cold, clean anger. So this is my fault. I'm not saying it's your fault, but you're absolutely saying it's my fault. I worked too much, so you had no choice but to cheat on me with my brother. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean, Riley? She opened her mouth to answer, but the doorbell rang. Evan had arrived for our family reunion. I opened the door to find my brother standing on the porch, hands shoved deep in his pockets, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world. Come on in, I said cheerfully. The gang's all here. Evan stepped inside and immediately saw Riley on the couch. The look that passed between them was everything I needed to confirm my suspicions. This wasn't a one-night mistake. This was a full-blown affair. So I said, closing the door behind him, which one of you wants to tell me how long this has been going on? Evan looked like he wanted to disappear into the floorboards. He was 30 years old, but standing in my living room with his shoulders hunched and his eyes darting between Riley and me, he looked about 16. Nick, I can explain. I'm sure you can. You always were good with explanations. Remember when you explained how Dad's tools ended up in your friend's garage? Or how you explained that dent in Mom's car? That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, and the sound made both of them flinch. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been you keeping your hands off my wife. Riley stood up from the couch, trying to insert herself between us. Nick, please, let's all just calm down and talk about this like adults. Adults? I turned to her, and she actually took a step backward. Adults don't sneak around behind their spouse's back. Adults don't lie about working late while they're actually screwing their brother-in-law. We never, Evan started. Don't. I held up a hand. Just don't. I've got video of you two practically having love on the dance floor at Pulse. I've got weeks of circumstantial evidence. I've got Riley's confession from 10 minutes ago. So please, spare me the denials. Evan's face crumpled. It wasn't supposed to happen. But it did happen. Yeah, it did. At least he was being honest now. That was something, I supposed. How long? I asked. Evan and Riley exchanged another look. She nodded slightly, giving him permission to tell the truth. About a month, he said quietly. A month. I let that sink in. So this started, 3 weeks after Riley and I got back from our honeymoon? Nick, 3 weeks, Evan. 3 weeks after I married her, you were already making your move. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you waited until the ink was dry on our marriage certificate and then decided to help yourself to my wife. Evan's face flushed red. You don't understand. Riley was unhappy. So you thought you'd cheer her up? She needed someone to talk to. And talking led to touching, and touching led to kissing, and kissing led to whatever the heck I saw last night. Riley was crying again, but I was past caring about her tears. Nick, I know how this looks, but we never meant for it to happen. We tried to stop. When? When did you try to stop? Several times. We both felt terrible about it, but not terrible enough to actually stop. It's complicated, Evan said. No, it's not complicated at all. It's actually very simple. You wanted something that belonged to me, so you took it, just like when we were kids. This isn't about childhood rivalry, isn't it? Because it feels exactly like every other time you've been jealous of something I had and decided you deserved it more. Evan's temper flared, and for a moment I saw the bratty little brother I'd grown up with. Maybe if you'd been a better husband, she wouldn't have needed to look elsewhere. The words hung in the air like smoke. Riley gasped, and Evan immediately looked like he wanted to take them back. There it is, I said quietly. The truth finally comes out. This is my fault for not being a good enough husband. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. And you know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe I was a terrible husband. Maybe I worked too much and didn't pay enough attention to my wife. Maybe I deserved to have her cheat on me. I walked over to the window and looked out at the street where Mrs. Marrow from next door was pretending to water her plants while obviously trying to eavesdrop on our conversation. But here's the thing, Evan. Even if I was the worst husband in the world, that still doesn't excuse what you did. Because you didn't just betray me. You betrayed our entire family. I turned back to face them. Mom and Dad are going to be heartbroken when they find out. Our cousins, our aunts and uncles, everyone who came to Riley's and my wedding and celebrated with us, they're all going to know that you couldn't keep your hands off your brother's wife. You're not going to tell them, Riley said, but her voice was uncertain. I'm not going to have to tell them. This is Millbrook, not New York City. Everyone's going to know by the end of the week. How? I smiled, and it must have been a particularly unpleasant expression because both of them looked alarmed. Because I'm not going to hide this, Riley. I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen or make excuses for either of you. When people ask me why we're getting divorced after 2 months of marriage, I'm going to tell them the truth. You can't do that, Evan said. Watch me. It'll destroy Riley's reputation. Should have thought of that before you started your affair. Riley sank back onto the couch, her face buried in her hands. This is a nightmare. For you, maybe. For me, it's liberation. My phone buzzed with a text from Cal. Everything okay? Saw Evan's car in your driveway. I showed them the message. Cal knows. And if Cal knows, then his girlfriend Sarah knows. And if Sarah knows, then half the town knows by dinner time. Nick, please. Riley looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can... No. I'll cut off all contact with Evan. I'll do whatever you want. I don't want anything from you, Riley. I want you gone. The house is mine, and you're not welcome in it anymore. But I don't have anywhere to go. I looked at Evan. I'm sure you can figure something out. You two seem good at making plans behind my back. Evan's face went pale. Nick, I can't. Jessica kicked me out. I'm staying on Tommy's couch. Sounds like a you problem. Where am I supposed to go? Riley's voice was rising toward hysteria. There's a motel on Route 9. I hear they rent by the week. You're being cruel. I'm being fair. You made your choice, Riley. Now you get to live with the consequences. I walked to the front door and opened it. I think we're done here. Neither of them moved. I said we're done here. Nick, Evan started. Get out of my house. We're family. No, we're not. Family doesn't do what you did. Evan looked like he wanted to argue, but something in my expression must have convinced him it wasn't worth the effort. He headed for the door, pausing to look back at Riley. Come on, he said quietly. Let's go. Riley gathered up her purse and the divorce papers, moving like she was in a trance. At the door, she turned back to me one last time. I loved you, Nick. I really did. No, you didn't. If you'd loved me, you wouldn't have done this. After they left, I stood in my living room and looked around at the space that was finally mine again. The silence was profound and peaceful. No more walking on eggshells, wondering why my wife seemed distant. No more making excuses for my brother's increasingly frequent visits. No more pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. I poured myself a beer and sat down on the couch where Riley had been crying 20 minutes earlier. My phone was buzzing with messages. Cal, my parents, a few other friends who'd apparently heard something was happening. I ignored them all. Tomorrow, I'd start dealing with the social fallout. Tomorrow, I'd figure out how to explain to my parents that their younger son had destroyed their older son's marriage. Tomorrow, I'd begin the process of rebuilding my life without Riley in it. But tonight, I was just going to sit in my house, drink my beer, and enjoy the sound of my own thoughts without wondering what my wife was really doing or who she was really with. It was the most peaceful I'd felt in months. Word traveled fast in Millbrook. By Thursday morning, my phone was ringing off the hook, and Mrs. Marrow had positioned herself permanently at her front window to monitor the comings and goings at my house. Cal showed up around 8 with coffee and donuts from Murphy's Bakery. Figured you might need some moral support, he said, settling into my kitchen table like he belonged there. News travels fast. Sarah ran into Tessa at the gym this morning. Apparently, Riley called her crying at 3 a.m., looking for a place to stay. And Tessa told her she was too busy with her own drama to get involved. Cal grinned. Turns out having an affair with a married woman's brother-in-law isn't great for your social standing. I sipped my coffee and considered this. So where did she end up? Motel 9, just like you predicted. Evan's there too, according to Tommy. Together? Same motel, different rooms. Apparently even they're not stupid enough to shack up together immediately after getting caught. My phone rang. Mom's number appeared on the screen and my stomach clenched. I have to take this. Nick? Mom's voice was tight with worry. I just got off the phone with Riley. She's very upset. She said you filed for divorce? That's right. Honey, what happened? You two seemed so happy at the wedding. I looked at Cal, who was pretending to be very interested in his donut while obviously listening to every word. Riley had an affair, Mom. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for so long I thought the call had dropped. An affair? Are you sure? I'm sure. With who? This was the moment I'd been dreading. Evan. Another long silence. Then, your brother, Evan? Yeah. I heard Dad's voice in the background, asking what was wrong. Mom's muffled explanation was followed by a string of profanity that would have made a sailor blush. Your father wants to talk to you, Mom said finally. Dad's voice came through the phone like a growl. Nicholas, tell me you're not serious. I wish I wasn't, Dad. That little son of a witch. I'm going to end him. Dad, 30 years old and he's still screwing up everything he touches. I should have seen this coming. It's not your fault? Like heck it's not. I raised him. I should have taught him better. In the background, I could hear Mom crying. The sound cut through me like a knife. Dad, I have to go. I'll call you later, okay? Nick, we're so sorry. If there's anything we can do... There's not. But thanks. After I hung up, Cal and I sat in silence for a while. That sounded rough, he said finally. My parents are good people. They don't deserve this. Neither do you. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Nick, this is Jessica, Evan's ex. Can we talk? I showed the message to Cal, who whistled low. This is getting interesting. I called the number. Jessica answered on the first ring. Nick, thank God. I wasn't sure you'd call me back. What can I do for you, Jessica? I need to tell you something about Evan, about why I really kicked him out. I'm listening. Can we meet somewhere? This isn't really a phone conversation. We agreed to meet at Murphy's Cafe in an hour. Jessica was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth and looking like she hadn't slept in days. Jessica Torres was 28, a nurse at Millbrook General, and had been dating Evan on and off for 2 years. She was pretty in a wholesome, girl-next-door way, but today she looked haggard and worn down. Thanks for meeting me, she said as I slid into the booth across from her. What did you want to tell me? Evan didn't just cheat on me with Riley. He's been cheating on me for months, with multiple women. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. How do you know? I found his phone unlocked one night about 3 weeks ago. There were text messages, photos, dating app conversations. He was basically running a one-man escort service. Jessica pulled out her own phone and showed me screenshots she'd taken. The messages were explicit, graphic, and involved at least 6 different women. Riley was just the latest, she continued, but she was special because she was married. Evan has this thing about taking women. It's like a game to him. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know what kind of person you're dealing with. And because... She hesitated. Because what? Because one of the other women he was seeing is married to a guy I work with. Her husband has no idea, and it's eating me alive watching him go through what you're going through. I studied Jessica's face. She was telling the truth. I could see it in her eyes. There's something else, she said. Evan's been bragging about Riley to his friends, saying things about how easy it was to steal her from you, how you never saw it coming. The cold knot in my stomach turned into a ball of ice. He's been making jokes about it? Worse than that, he's been saying that Riley was never really in love with you, that she only married you for security, and that she was just waiting for someone better to come along. I sat back in the booth, processing this information. It was one thing to know that Riley and Evan had betrayed me. It was another to learn that they'd been laughing about it behind my back. Why should I believe you? Jessica reached into her purse and pulled out a small digital recorder. Because I recorded him. She pressed play, and Evan's voice filled the small space between us. The funny thing is, Nick actually thinks Riley loves him. Like, he has no clue that she's just using him for his money and his house. She told me she's never been attracted to him, not even when they first started dating. She just wanted stability, and he was dumb enough to provide it. Another voice, one I didn't recognize. So what's the long-term plan? You going to steal her away permanently? Evan's laughter was cruel and familiar. Why would I want to do that? Riley's fun, but she's not exactly wife material. She cheated on her husband with his brother. What does that tell you about her character? No, I'm just enjoying the ride until something better comes along. Jessica stopped the recording. There's more. but I think you get the idea. I sat in stunned silence, trying to process what I'd just heard. It was bad enough that Riley had cheated on me. But to learn that she'd never loved me at all, that our entire relationship had been based on lies and manipulation. When was this recorded? 2 nights ago, at Tommy's apartment. 2 nights ago. While I was at home alone, trying to figure out how to rebuild my life, Evan was across town bragging about destroying it. Jessica, I need copies of everything you have. The text messages, the photos, the recordings, all of it. Already done. She handed me a flash drive. It's all on there? Why are you doing this? She was quiet for a moment, staring into her coffee cup. Because I loved him, she said finally. For 2 years I loved him and made excuses for him and convinced myself he was going to change. And the whole time, he was laughing at me behind my back, just like he's laughing at you. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be smart. Don't let them get away with this. After Jessica left, I sat in the cafe for another hour, going through the contents of the flash drive on my laptop. The evidence was damning and comprehensive. Text messages between Evan and Riley dating back to our honeymoon. Photos of them together in compromising positions. Screenshots of Evan's conversations with other women, including detailed descriptions of his affairs. But it was the audio recordings that really got to me. Hours of Evan talking to his friends about his conquests, including a 20-minute segment where he described in graphic detail his first intimate encounter with Riley. By the time I left Murphy's, I had a plan. It wasn't a nice plan or a forgiving plan, but it was a plan that would ensure Evan and Riley faced consequences for what they'd done. The annual Millbrook Harvest Festival was this weekend. The whole town would be there, including everyone who'd attended my wedding just 2 months ago. It was time to give them all an update on how married life was treating me. Saturday morning dawned crisp and clear. Perfect weather for the Harvest Festival. Main Street was already buzzing with activity by 9 a.m. Vendors setting up booths, families claiming spots for the parade, teenagers trying to look too cool to be excited about small-town festivities. I'd spent Friday evening preparing for today, and I was ready. Cal met me at my house at 10, carrying a cooler full of beer and wearing a grin that suggested he was looking forward to whatever I had planned. So what's the strategy? He asked as we walked toward downtown. No strategy, just honesty. That's what worries me. The festival was in full swing by the time we arrived. The Millbrook High School marching band was warming up near the bandstand. Local politicians were pressing flesh and kissing babies, and the smell of fried dough and apple cider filled the air. It was exactly the kind of wholesome, small-town event that Riley had always claimed to love, but secretly found boring. She'd complained about it last year, saying it was too provincial, and wondering why we couldn't live somewhere with real culture. I should have paid attention to that complaint. Cal and I found a spot near the beer garden and settled into people watch. Within minutes, we were joined by Tommy Martinez, Dave Sullivan, and a few other guys from high school. The conversation was carefully casual at first, work, sports, the weather, but I could tell they were all dying to ask about the divorce. So, Nick, Tommy said finally, I heard you and Riley are having some problems. Problems? I took a swig of beer and smiled. No problems at all. Everything's crystal clear now. Clear how? Well, I found out my wife's been sleeping with my brother, so we're getting divorced. Pretty straightforward, really. The silence that followed was profound. Dave nearly choked on his beer. Your brother? Tommy's voice was barely a whisper. Yep, Evan. Apparently they've been having quite the time together while I was at work. Jesus, Nick, I'm sorry. Don't be sorry, I'm not. Best thing that could have happened to me, really. Better to find out now than after we had kids. More people were gathering around our group, drawn by the obvious tension in the conversation. I recognized several faces from Riley's and my wedding, neighbors, coworkers, family friends. How did you find out? Dave asked. Caught them at Pulse Wednesday night. They were practically having love on the dance floor. Mrs. Patterson from the church gasped, Oh my goodness, Nick. How awful for you. Awful? No, Mrs. Patterson. Awful would have been staying married to someone who thinks so little of me that she'd cheat with my own brother. This is actually liberating. I pulled out my phone and queued up one of the less explicit audio recordings Jessica had given me. Want to hear what my brother really thinks of me? Before anyone could answer, I hit play. Evan's voice carried clearly in the suddenly quiet space. Nick's always been the responsible one, the good son, the one who does everything right. But he's also boring as heck. Riley told me she's never been truly attracted to him. She married him because he was safe, not because she wanted him. The crowd around us had grown larger, and I could see phones being pulled out and people starting to record. In a town like Millbrook, this was the kind of drama that would be talked about for years. That's enough, Nick. I turned to see Riley pushing through the crowd, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment. She was dressed in jeans and a sweater, trying to look casual and unaffected, but her eyes were red-rimmed and her hands were shaking. Riley, I said cheerfully, so glad you could make it. I was just sharing some family news with our friends. Stop it, right now. Stop what? Telling the truth? You're humiliating yourself. I'm humiliating myself? I laughed, and several people in the crowd chuckled along with me. That's rich, coming from someone who was grinding on her brother-in-law at a public nightclub. Riley's face went white. It wasn't like that. Really? Because I have video evidence that suggests otherwise. Nick, please, can we talk about this privately? Why? We're all friends here. These people came to our wedding, Riley. They brought us gifts and wished us well and celebrated our marriage. Don't you think they deserve to know how that worked out? I could see Evan approaching from across the street, moving quickly through the crowd. He looked panicked, and I didn't blame him. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced, raising my beer in a mock toast, I'd like you all to meet my brother Evan, the man who helped my wife discover that marriage vows are really more like suggestions. Evan reached the edge of the crowd just as I finished speaking. The look on his face was priceless, pure mortification mixed with desperate anger. Nick, that's enough. Is it? Because I don't think it's nearly enough. I think our friends and neighbors should know exactly what kind of people they're dealing with. You're drunk, Riley said, but her voice lacked conviction. I'm not drunk, I'm just honest. There's a difference. I turned back to the crowd, which had grown to include at least 50 people, including several members of Riley's family and most of my coworkers. You know what the funny part is? I continued. I actually thought I was lucky to be married to Riley. I thought I'd won the lottery. Turns out I was just the consolation prize until something better came along. That's not true, Riley said, but her voice was barely audible. No? Then why don't you explain to everyone here why you've been sleeping with my brother for the past month? It's complicated. It's really not complicated at all. You wanted to have love with someone else, so you did. The only complicated part was doing it with my brother and then lying to my face about it every single day. Evan finally found his voice. Nick, you need to stop this. You're embarrassing everyone. I'm embarrassing everyone? That's interesting, Evan. Tell me, when you were bragging to your friends about how easy it was to steal my wife, were you worried about embarrassing anyone then? The crowd murmured, and I could see people pulling out their phones to record. This was going to be all over social media within the hour. I never said that. Really? I pulled out my phone again, because I have recordings that suggest otherwise. Evan's face went pale. Where did you get those? Jessica gave them to me. Turns out, she's not too happy about being cheated on either. Jessica's lying. Jessica's a lot of things, but she's not a liar. Unlike some people I could mention. I could see Riley and Evan exchanging desperate looks, trying to figure out how to control the damage, but it was too late for damage control. The story was out, and in a town like Millbrook, it would spread faster than wildfire. You want to know the really pathetic part? I continued, addressing the crowd. They're both staying at the Motel 9 now, separate rooms, of course, because apparently even they have some standards. Several people in the crowd laughed, and I could see Riley's face crumple with humiliation. Please stop, she whispered. Why? Did you stop when I asked you to be faithful to me? Did you stop when I asked you to respect our marriage? Nick, did you stop when you promised to love, honor, and cherish me, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health until death do us part? Riley was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks in black streams. A few people in the crowd looked uncomfortable, like they thought I was going too far. But I wasn't done yet. You know what, folks? I want to thank Riley and Evan publicly, because they've taught me something valuable about trust and loyalty and the importance of choosing the right people to have in your life. I raised my beer again. So here's to my ex-wife and my ex-brother. May they get exactly what they deserve. The crowd was completely silent now, watching the three of us like we were actors in some twisted small-town drama. And here's to all of you, I continued, for being the kind of friends and neighbors who actually give a care about right and wrong. I drained my beer and set the empty bottle on a nearby table. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go enjoy the festival. Riley, Evan, I hope you have a wonderful day. I know I will. As I walked away, I could hear the crowd exploding into conversation behind me. Cal hurried to catch up with me, grinning like a maniac. Holy crap, Nick, that was brutal. That was justice. Riley looked like she was going to pass out. Good. Maybe now she'll understand what it feels like to be humiliated in public. We spent the rest of the afternoon wandering through the festival, and everywhere we went, people approached me with sympathy, support, and barely concealed excitement about the drama they'd just witnessed. By evening, the story had spread throughout the entire town. Riley and Evan had disappeared from the festival within an hour of my little speech. But the damage was done. In Millbrook, reputation was everything, and theirs were now in ruins. But I wasn't finished with them yet. Not by a long shot. The week following the festival was a masterclass in small-town social dynamics. Riley's reputation imploded so completely that she was asked to take indefinite leave from her job after several clients specifically requested not to work with her. Evan found himself persona non grata at every bar and restaurant in town, including the places where he'd been a regular for years. Meanwhile, I became something of a folk hero. People I barely knew stopped me on the street to offer support. Neighbors brought me casseroles, and my construction business suddenly had a waiting list of clients who wanted to hire that poor man whose wife cheated on him. It was almost enough to make me feel guilty. Almost. Thursday evening, I was in my workshop when Cal burst through the basement door without knocking. "Dude, you need to see this." He handed me his phone, which was open to Facebook. Riley had posted a long, rambling status update that was equal parts self-pity and character assassination. I know there have been rumors going around town about my personal life, and I feel I need to set the record straight. Yes, Nick and I are getting divorced, but it's not because of anything I did wrong. Nick has anger management issues that he's hidden from everyone, including me. He's been emotionally harmful throughout our marriage, controlling my finances, isolating me from my friends, and making me feel worthless. When I found comfort in the friendship of someone who actually treated me with kindness and respect, Nick flew into a rage and has been trying to destroy my reputation ever since. I'm not the villain in this story. I'm a victim of domestic mistreatment who's finally found the courage to speak up. I read the post twice, my anger building with each word. How many people have seen this? It's been up for 3 hours, 47 comments so far, and most of them aren't buying what she's selling. He was right. The comments were a mixture of skepticism and outright disbelief. "Riley, I've known Nick for 15 years. He's not harmful." "Emotional mistreatment? You were cheating on him with his brother. Girl, you got caught. Own it and move on. This is pathetic, even for you." But there were a few supportive comments, mostly from people who didn't know me well, or who had their own axes to grind against men in general. I believe you, Riley. Harmful people are good at hiding their true nature. It takes courage to speak out. Don't let them silence you. The way he humiliated you at the festival was definitely harmful behavior. I handed the phone back to Cal. She's trying to flip the script. "Yeah, but it's not working. Most people can see right through it. Most isn't all. And if this gains traction..." I was thinking about my business, my reputation, the possibility that Riley's lies might actually stick with some people. In the current social climate, accusations of misuse were taken seriously, as they should be. But false accusations could destroy an innocent person's life. What are you going to do? I'm going to end this. Friday morning, I called Evelyn and explained the situation. She's trying to claim domestic misuse, I told her. Emotional misuse, financial control, isolation, the whole playbook. Do you have evidence to refute these claims? I have evidence that she was planning this defense before I even found out about the affair. I told Evelyn about the recordings Jessica had given me, including several where Riley and Evan discussed how to handle the situation if they got caught. There's one recording where Riley specifically talks about claiming misuse if things go bad. She says, and I quote, "If Nick finds out, I'll just say he was controlling and harmful. Everyone always believes the woman in these situations." That's remarkably stupid of her to say out loud. Riley's not as smart as she thinks she is. Can you get me copies of these recordings? Already on the way. That afternoon, Evelyn called me back with good news. I've reviewed the audio files, and several of them are absolute gold. Not only do they prove premeditation regarding the misuse claims, but they also show clear evidence of alienation of affection an intentional infliction of emotional distress. What does that mean in practical terms? It means we can sue both Riley and Evan for damages. And more importantly, it means we can use these recordings to completely destroy her credibility if she tries to pursue the misuse angle. How public can we make this? Very public, if that's what you want. Court filings are public record. That's exactly what I want. Saturday morning, I woke up to find Evan's truck in my driveway. He was sitting on my front porch, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "We need to talk," he said when I opened the door. "No, we don't. Riley's talking about going to the police, filing a restraining order against you." "Based on what?" "She says you've been stalking her, harassing her. She's going to claim you're dangerous." I laughed. "Stalking her? I haven't seen her since the festival." "She says you've been driving by the motel, following her to work." "I haven't been anywhere near the motel, and she doesn't have a job anymore, remember?" Evan looked confused. "She told me she was still working." "She was fired Monday morning. Didn't she tell you?" She said she was taking time off to deal with the divorce stress." I studied my brother's face. He looked genuinely surprised, which meant Riley had been lying to him too. "Evan, when's the last time you actually talked to Riley? I mean, really talked to her, not just, we talk all the time." "About what?" "Because from what I can tell, she's been feeding you a steady diet of lies about everything from her employment status to my supposed stalking behavior. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? When's the last time she told you she loved you?" Evan was quiet for a long moment. That's not what this is about, isn't it? Because I've heard the recordings, Evan. I know what you really think of her. And I know what she really thinks of both of us." "What recordings?" I pulled out my phone and played him the clip where Riley described her long-term plan. The thing is, Evan's fun, but he's not husband material. He's broke, he's immature, and he's got a wandering eye. Nick, for all his faults, is stable and reliable. If I play this right, I can have the best of both worlds, security from Nick and excitement from Evan. And if it all falls apart, I'll just claim Nick was harmful and take half of everything in the divorce. Evan's face went white as he listened to his lover casually dismiss him as a temporary diversion. "She was using both of us," I said quietly. "You were her entertainment, and I was her retirement plan. She wouldn't." "Listen to the recordings, Evan. All of them. Jessica gave me hours of audio, and Riley doesn't come off well in any of it." I handed him a flash drive with copies of everything. "Take your time, listen to it all, then decide if she's worth destroying our family over." Evan took the drive with shaking hands. "Why are you giving me this?" "Because despite everything, you're still my brother. And because Riley's about to throw you under the bus to save herself." "What do you mean?" "She's going to claim that you seduced her, that you took advantage of her emotional vulnerability, that the whole affair was your idea. She's going to paint herself as a victim and you as a predator. She wouldn't do that. She already has. Check her Facebook page." Evan left without another word, clutching the flash drive like it contained his salvation or his damnation, maybe both. Sunday morning, my phone rang at 6 a.m. It was Evan, and he sounded like he'd been crying. "I listened to them," he said without preamble. "All of them." "And? She never loved either of us, did she?" "No, she didn't. I threw away my relationship with my brother, my family, my reputation, everything, for someone who was just using me." "Yeah, you did. Nick, I'm so sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry." I was quiet for a long moment, trying to decide how I felt about Evan's apology. It was too little, too late. But it was also the first time he'd taken full responsibility for what he'd done. "What are you going to do now?" I asked finally. "I don't know. Riley wants me to back up her story about you being harmful. She says if we stick together, we can make people believe it." "And will you?" "No, God, no. Nick, the things she said about you on those recordings, the way she talked about manipulating you, lying to you, using you, it made me sick. Because you realized she was doing the same thing to you. Because I realized what kind of person I'd become. What kind of person would help someone destroy their own husband? A person like Riley. Yeah, a person like Riley." Monday morning, Evelyn filed a comprehensive lawsuit against both Riley and Evan, seeking damages for alienation of affection, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and defamation. The filing included transcripts of the most damaging recordings, Riley's own words proving that she had planned to make false misuse allegations from the beginning. By Tuesday, the story had been picked up by the local newspaper. By Wednesday, it was trending on social media. By Thursday, Riley had hired a lawyer and was desperately trying to walk back her misuse claims. But it was too late. The recordings were public record now, and everyone could hear exactly what she thought of her husband, her lover, and the town she'd been living in. Friday evening, I was having dinner at Murphy's when Riley walked in. She looked terrible, thin, pale, with dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't hide. She spotted me immediately and walked over to my table. "Can I sit down? It's a free country." She slid into the booth across from me, her hands trembling as she folded them on the table. "I'm leaving town," she said quietly. "Good. My lawyer says the lawsuit will follow me wherever I go. Probably. I'll be paying you for years. Hopefully." She was quiet for a moment, staring at her hands. "I know you hate me," she said finally, "and you have every right to. But I want you to know that I never meant for things to go this far. You meant every bit of it, Riley. The recordings prove that. Those recordings, they don't tell the whole story. They tell enough of it. I did love you, Nick. At the beginning, I really did. No, you loved the idea of me. You loved having a stable, reliable man who would give you security and ask for nothing in return. But you never loved me." She started crying then, quiet tears that she wiped away with the back of her hand. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For all of it, I'm sorry. I know you are. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry there were consequences. You're sorry your plan didn't work. But you're not sorry for what you did to me. That's not true, isn't it? Because if you were really sorry for hurting me, you wouldn't have tried to destroy my reputation with false misuse allegations." Riley had no answer for that. "Where will you go?" I asked. "My sister lives in Phoenix. She said I can stay with her until I figure things out. Good luck." She stood up slowly, like she was carrying a great weight. "For what it's worth, Nick, you deserve better than me." Yeah, I did. After she left, I sat in the booth for a while, finishing my dinner and thinking about the past 2 months. It felt like a lifetime since I'd gotten that phone call from Cal, since I'd driven down to Pulse to find my wife in my brother's arms. The revenge had been everything I'd hoped for and more. Riley's reputation was destroyed, her career was over, and she was facing years of financial consequences for her betrayal. Evan had lost his family, his friends, and his standing in the community. They'd both gotten exactly what they deserved. But sitting there in Murphy's, watching the normal people of Millbrook go about their normal lives, I realized something important. I wasn't angry anymore. The cold, hard rage that had sustained me through the divorce, the public confrontations, the legal battles, it was gone. I was free, not just from Riley and her lies, but from the bitterness and hatred that had been consuming me. My phone buzzed with a text from Cal. "Beer at the Rusty Anchor?" I texted back. "On my way." As I walked out of Murphy's and into the crisp October evening, I felt lighter than I had in months. Riley was leaving town tomorrow. Evan was moving to Portland to start over, and I was finally alone with my thoughts and my future. It had been a heck of a 2 months. But it was over now. I had my life back, and I intended to make the most of it.